Imagine a young prince. He wears golden clothes, walks with guards behind him, and sits on a huge royal throne. People bow when he enters. He is powerful, he is rich. He is the future king. But something is wrong. His face looks strange. His jaw is too big. His tongue is always sticking out. He can't speak clearly. His legs shake when he walks. Sometimes he forgets things like who his mother is. This is not a made-up story. This is a real boy named Charles II of Spain. He was born into a royal family that wanted to keep their blood pure. That means they wanted to marry only family members, like cousins, nieces, even uncles and aunts. They thought this would keep their power strong, but they were wrong. Their pure blood turned into a curse, and Charles II paid the price. What this story is really about? Hello and welcome to Darkiest Historians. Today we're going to tell you one of the darkest secrets of royal history. You may have heard that kings and queens lived in fancy, palaces and had big feasts. But what many people don't know is this: royal families often married each other again and again, not for love, but for control and money and keeping power inside the family. They thought this was smart, but what happened instead? Sick children, strange faces, weak minds, early deaths. In this video, you will learn about kings and queens who were trapped by their own rules. You'll see how trying to stay royal and pure hurt the very families who ruled over others. This is not fiction. This is real history. What is inbreeding? Let's start with a simple question. What is inbreeding? Inbreeding means that people from the same family have babies together, like two cousins who marry and have a child, or a man who marries his niece. In normal families, this doesn't happen, but in royal families, it happened a lot. Why is this bad? Because when you marry someone too close to your blood, your babies get two of the same genes. And if those genes are broken, the child may be born with health problems. Here's an easy way to understand. Imagine your genes are like instructions inside your body. Each person gets one set of instructions from mom and one from dad. If both instructions are strong, the baby is healthy. But if both parents give bad instructions, like a broken heart gene or brain gene, the baby may get sick. If cousins or siblings marry, they often carry the same bad genes, so their children have a higher chance of getting those bad genes twice. That's what happened to many royal families. Why did royals do this? Now you may ask, if it's so bad, why did kings and queens keep marrying their cousins? The answer is simple. They wanted power. A long time ago, people believed that royalty came from God. Kings said they were chosen by heaven, so they didn't want to marry normal people. Only other royals were good enough. But there weren't many royal families, so they kept marrying each other, again and again, over generations. Here's an example. King A has a daughter, King B has a son. They marry their kids. Later, their grandkids marry again. Then their great-grandkids do the same. In just 3 or 4 generations, the family tree becomes a circle, not a tree. Who did this the most? One of the worst cases of inbreeding happened in the Habsburg family. They ruled parts of Europe for over 500 years. That's a long time. The Habsburgs believed their blood was special. They married close family again and again, and by the time Charles II of Spain was born in 1661, their bloodline was already very damaged. Charles had a huge lower jaw called the Habsburg jaw, could not speak properly, couldn't eat without choking, couldn't walk well, couldn't have children, died young. Doctors said his body looked like he was made from different people put together badly. His family's wish to keep the bloodline pure made him weak, lonely, and broken, and when Charles died without children, the Spanish Empire collapsed. What you'll see in this story. In this video, we will show how many royal families across Europe, Egypt, and Hawaii followed this same pattern. Tell stories of real people who suffered from these choices. Explain how inbreeding worked using simple words and pictures. And finally, ask, what did the world learn from all this pain? Why this still matters today? You may think that happened long ago. Why does it matter now? But it does, because even today, people sometimes care too much about pure blood or perfect families. They may look down on others who are different. History teaches us that these ideas can lead to real pain. Royal people, who had everything, lost their health, their minds, of the kings and queens who paid the price for trying to stay pure. Next up, we'll look at how the Habsburg family started their long road to disaster and how one family tree caused the fall of an empire. Stay with us. The story is just beginning. The rise of the Habsburgs? To understand the curse, we need to go back in time. Back to the 1400s. A time of kings, knights, castles, and battles. There was a royal family called the Habsburgs. They were rich, they were powerful, and they ruled a huge part of Europe. Countries like Spain, Austria, Hungary, and the Netherlands were under their control. The Habsburgs had one big goal: keep the power in the family. But how? Not by fighting, not by building better armies, but by marrying their own family. Yes, instead of marrying people from other countries, they married their own cousins, uncles, nieces, and even sometimes brothers and sisters. They believed this would make their bloodline strong. They believed it would protect their power. But they were wrong. The family tree that went in circles. Let's talk about a man named Philip the Handsome. He was a Habsburg. In 1496, he married Joanna of Castile, a Spanish princess. Their son became Charles V, one of the most powerful kings in history. Now, Charles V's children married other royal people. But again, they were all family. Over the years, the same families kept marrying each other, and the family tree stopped growing like a real tree. It started to loop back in on itself. Imagine a tree that folds into a circle. That's what the Habsburg family tree looked like. In fact, Charles II of Spain, the prince from Section 1, had only 16 great-great-grandparents. Do you know how many you're supposed to have? 64. That's right, you and I have 64 great-great-grandparents. Charles had 16. Why? Because the same people kept showing up again and again in his family tree. Genetic problems begin to show. At first, people didn't notice any big problems. The kings and queens still looked healthy. They could talk, walk, rule, and fight wars. But slowly, things began to change. Kids started being born with big jaws, long faces, strange eyes, and weak bones. Some children couldn't learn how to speak. Some couldn't walk straight. Some died before they were even 5 years old. And many couldn't have babies of their own. Doctors at that time didn't understand genes. But today, we do. And we know now, these children were born sick because their parents were too closely related. Charles II falling point. Now let's return to Charles II, the last Habsburg king of Spain. He was the final result of over 200 years of family inbreeding. Here's what Charles suffered from. He had a huge lower jaw and couldn't close his mouth. He drooled all the time and couldn't speak clearly. He was very short and skinny, his legs were weak, he couldn't read or write. He had seizures, brain attacks. He was always tired and sick, but that's not all. He got married twice, but he never had a child. He couldn't produce an heir. That means no son or daughter to take the throne after him. People said, how can a king who can't speak, read, or walk be our ruler? The answer? Because he was royal blood. And that royal blood was now the reason Spain was falling apart. The country starts to suffer. During Charles's time, Spain became weak. The army lost battles. The country lost money. The people were angry and poor. But the royal family did nothing. They were too busy protecting the purity of their bloodline. So Spain's enemies, like France and England, grew stronger. And when Charles II finally died in 1700, the royal family had no one to take the throne. This started a giant war in Europe called the War of Spanish Succession. Millions of people were affected, and all because one family wanted to marry only their own blood. A doctor speaks out. Years later, scientists studied the Habsburgs. They looked at their paintings and letters. They also studied their bones and bodies. One doctor said, Charles II was a result of too many royal marriages between close relatives. His family made the same mistake over and over again. They thought they were building strength, but they were building sickness. Another scientist wrote, if you look at the family tree, Charles II's mother was also his cousin, aunt, and great-niece, all at once. Can you imagine? One woman being all of that to one person? That's not just confusing, it's dangerous. What this teaches us, the story of the Habsburgs teaches us something important. Power is not more important than people. When people care only about their name, money, or control, they can hurt the people they love. The kings and queens thought they were protecting their thrones, but they were hurting their children and their countries. Deep in the hot sands of Egypt, there was a hidden room. It was quiet for thousands of years. No one knew what was inside. But in 1922, a British man named Howard Carter opened, and bodies. One doctor said, Charles II was a result of too many royal marriages between close relatives, all right? His family made the same mistake over and over again. They thought they were building strength, but they were building sickness. Another scientist wrote, if you look at the family tree, Charles II's mother was also his cousin, aunt, and great-niece all at once. Can you imagine? One woman being all of that to one person? That's not just confusing, it's dangerous. What this teaches us, the story of the Habsburgs teaches us something important. Power is not more important than people. When people care only about their name, money, or control, they can hurt the people they love. The kings and queens thought they were protecting their thrones, but they were hurting their children and their countries. Deep in the hot sands of Egypt, there was a hidden room. It was quiet for thousands of years. No one knew what was inside. But in 1922, a British man named Howard Carter opened that room, and found something amazing. It was a golden tomb. Inside the tomb was a small coffin. Inside the coffin was the body of a boy. That boy was a king. His name was Tutankhamun, or King Tut. He became king when he was just 9 years old, but he died only 10 years later. He was just 19. His body was broken. His spine was bent. His foot was twisted. His teeth were crowded. He had malaria. He had trouble walking. Doctors and scientists wondered, why was King Tut's body so damaged? Then they discovered something shocking. Tutankhamun's family secrets. Tutankhamun's father was a king named Akhenaten. His mother was Akhenaten's sister. Yes, you read that right. His mom and dad were brother and sister. This wasn't strange in ancient Egypt. It was actually common. The pharaohs of Egypt believed they were gods, and they believed gods should only marry other gods. So they married their brothers, sisters, and even daughters. That means many of their children were born with serious health problems. Some died very young. Others lived with pain all their lives. And some, like King Tut, were put on the throne even though they were already sick. Genetic trouble in the family. Scientists studied Tutankhamen's DNA in 2010. DNA is like a map inside your body that shows where you came from. It also tells doctors what kind of health you might have. The scientists made a shocking discovery. Tutankhamen's mother and father were full siblings, and he probably married his own half-sister too. That means bad genes were being passed down over and over again, just like in the Habsburg family. Because of this, King Tut may have suffered from a bone disease that made his bones soft, a foot disorder that made it hard to walk, epilepsy, brain seizures, immune weakness, which made malaria worse, scoliosis, which bent his back. He had to walk with a cane even as a teenager. Over 130 walking sticks were found in his tomb. That tells us King Tut may have been a king, but he was a king in pain. The royal idea of purity. Why did Egyptian kings marry sisters and daughters? The answer is the same as in Europe. Power, purity, divine blood. They believed that mixing royal blood with non-royal people would dirty the bloodline. So to keep it pure, they married only each other. But blood is not magic. When the same blood is mixed again and again, the body starts to break down. The Egyptians didn't know about genes, but they still paid the price. Family tree of Tutankhamun. Here's what Tut's family tree looked like. His father, Akhenaten, and mother were siblings. His wife, Tutankhamun, was also his half-sister. Some of his aunts were also his stepmothers. Some of his cousins were also his nieces. It's very confusing, but also very sad, because most of the babies born to this family either died before birth, died as babies, or were born with sicknesses. In fact, 2 tiny mummies were found in Tutankhamun's tomb. They were babies, his daughters. Both were stillborn. That means they died before they were even born. A king who couldn't rule. Even though King Tut wore a crown and held a golden stick, he probably couldn't walk without help. Even though he sat on a throne, he may have needed others to make decisions for him. He was not strong. He was not powerful. He was a young boy trapped in a broken body. And that body was broken because of family choices made long before he was born. Choices about love, about marriage, and about keeping the royal blood pure. The end of a dynasty. King Tutankhamun died suddenly. Some say it was from malaria. Some say he broke his leg and got an infection, but no one really knows for sure. What we do know is this. When Tut died, the royal line of his family ended. There were no strong sons left, no healthy kings to follow. Egypt was never the same again. What modern science says, in 2010, Scientists used CT scans and DNA tests on Tut's mummy. They found out he had many genetic diseases. He could not have lived a full life. And most of his pain came from inbreeding. A doctor on the team said if King Tut had been born in today's world, he would have needed help walking, learning, and even breathing. He was the victim of royal inbreeding. The power of a name. Even though Tutankhamun was not a strong king, today he's one of the most famous names in the world. Why? Because of the golden treasures found in his tomb, because of the mystery of his early death, and because of the story his body tells us, a story about family mistakes and a desire to be pure that turned. In the green forests of Hawaii, there lived a powerful queen. She wore flowers in her hair, walked with strength, and her words made people listen. Her name was Queen Liliuokalani. She was the last queen of Hawaii. But long before her time, Hawaii had kings and queens who ruled with ancient traditions. One of those traditions was this: royal people must only marry other royal people. And sometimes that meant marrying your own brother or sister. To us today, this sounds strange. But to ancient Hawaiian royals, it was a sacred law. What did Hawaiians believe? In old Hawaii, kings and queens were not just rulers. They were seen as gods on earth. They believed that royal blood carried mana, a special kind of power or spirit. The more mana you had, the closer you were to the gods. But mana could be lost if a royal married someone below them. So to protect mana, royals married their own brothers, sisters, or close cousins. This was called niaupio marriage, a sacred joining of the highest bloodlines. The belief was, keep the blood strong and the gods will stay with us. The story of Princess Nahianana. Let's look at one real story. In the 1800s, there was a princess named Nahianana. She was the sister of King Kamehameha III. Their family believed they were chosen by the gods. So when the king became old enough to marry, people expected him to marry his sister. Yes, his sister Nahianana. This was not seen as strange in Hawaiian culture at that time. In fact, it was seen as royal duty. But then something happened that changed everything. Christian missionaries came to Hawaii from Europe and America. They brought new ideas, new rules, and new beliefs. They told the Hawaiian royals, marrying your sister is wrong. They said it was a sin. They said it would make God angry. Now the royal family was confused. Who should they listen to? Their own traditions or these new religious teachers? Law and loss. Princess Nahianana and her brother loved each other deeply. Some say it was the kind of love only family feels. Others say it may have been something more. But under the pressure of the missionaries, they were not allowed to marry. Nahianana was later forced to marry someone else, a royal man chosen by the new Christian leaders. She became very sad. She felt her culture was being stolen, and not long after her marriage, she died at the age of just 21. Her death broke many hearts. Some Hawaiians believe she died of a sickness. Others believe she died from a broken spirit, from being forced to live a life that wasn't hers, the cost of keeping mana. Hawaiian royals continued the tradition of close marriage for many years. But like the Habsburgs and Egyptians, it came with a cost. Some children were born with deformed bones, breathing problems, weak immune systems, or died at birth. They didn't understand genes, just like other old royal families. But they saw what was happening, and slowly people began to question the tradition. Was mana really being protected? Or were they hurting the very people they loved? A fight between culture and science. Hawaiian history is special because it shows a struggle between belief and science. On one side, ancient beliefs, sacred power, family pride. On the other side, new ideas, Christian rules, and later, modern science. People were caught in the middle. Many felt torn between honoring the old ways and protecting the health of their children. By the late 1800s, royal inbreeding in Hawaii had mostly stopped, but it left behind a long history of pain, confusion, and quiet suffering. What makes this story different? Unlike Europe or Egypt, the Hawaiian royals didn't marry for power or greed. They truly believed they were keeping the spirit of their people alive. They wanted to stay close to the gods. They wanted to protect their identity. So their reason was different, but the result was often the same. Sickness, sadness, and early death. The last queen speaks. At the end of the Hawaiian royal family was Queen Liliuokalani. She saw her people lose their kingdom. She saw their culture change. She saw how old beliefs were both beautiful and dangerous. Before she died, she wrote, You may drive out the spirit of the land, but the land remembers. The blood of my people is still here. Her words remind us, even when history ends, the people who lived it should never be forgotten. Ending section 4. Teaser for next part. So now we've seen how the idea of pure royal blood touched Europe, Egypt, and the islands of Hawaii. But there's still more to explore. In the next part, we'll visit the Bourbon dynasty, where secrets, shame, and science all clashed, and where royal children were hidden away because of their strange conditions. Why were some princes never shown in public? What did doctors try to cover up? And how did these family choices affect the whole country? It's a cold morning in France. The Palace of Versailles is waking up. Servants run through long halls. Nobles talk in golden rooms. The king and queen greet guests with smiles and grand clothes. But behind one quiet door, there is no sound, no laughter, no music, just silence. Inside that room is a young prince. He's part of the Bourbon family, one of the richest and most powerful royal families in Europe. But this prince is not like the others. He doesn't speak, he doesn't walk, he doesn't even look up when someone enters. The servants say he's touched by the angels. The doctors say he's not right in the head. But no one dares to speak too loudly, because he's royal blood and royal secrets must stay hidden. Who are the Bourbons? The Bourbon dynasty ruled France for hundreds of years. They had kings, queens, princes, and princesses. They wore shiny crowns and lived in beautiful palaces. They also believed in pure bloodlines, just like the Habsburgs. That means they married cousins, and sometimes very close cousins. They thought it would keep their family line strong, protect their power, make sure no outsiders could take their throne, but their choices led to something else. Sickness, weakness, sadness, the hidden children. In the Bourbon family, not all children were shown to the public. Some princes and princesses were born with strange shapes, unable to speak or hear, suffering from fits or shaking, or had weak minds that never grew. These children were often kept away from the public eye. They lived in back rooms, they were cared for in silence, they were rarely painted or written about. One prince was said to speak like a baby even at age 10. Another would stare at walls for hours, never answering his name. In letters, royals would say things like, "The boy is not fit for court. He must rest in the countryside. He is unwell and should not be seen." But the truth was this. These children were the result of too many royal marriages between cousins. The price of power. King Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, ruled France for 72 years. He was powerful, smart, and rich. But even he had family problems. Many of his children and grandchildren were sick at birth, died before age 10, or had mental and physical disorders. His grandson Louis, Duke of Burgundy, had a son who was said to be slow of body and mind. Some doctors believed the boy had epilepsy. Others said he had a twisted soul and was cursed. Of course, it was not a curse. It was science. It was inbreeding. What did doctors say? In those times, science was still very young. Doctors didn't know about genes the way we do today. So when royal children were born with problems, they made up strange ideas. Some said it was punishment from God. Others blamed the mother. A few even thought bad air or evil spirits caused it. But in truth, the cause was often in the blood. Doctors today say many Bourbon children showed signs of genetic diseases like hemophilia or epilepsy, mental delays, facial deformities, weak immune systems, just like the Habsburgs and the Pharaohs, a royal cover-up. Because image was so important, royal families didn't want people to see the flaws in their children. They didn't want their enemies to know their bloodline was breaking. So they made rules like do not paint the child, do not allow guests near the boy, send him to the countryside. It was not always because they were cruel. Sometimes they wanted to protect the child from shame. But still, these children lived alone, and many died without being remembered. The tragedy of Marie Therese. Let's talk about one more royal child. Marie Therese Charlotte, daughter of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. She was born during the time of the French Revolution. Her whole family was killed. She was locked in a dark prison for years. When she was finally freed, she was quiet and strange. Some people believed she had gone mad. Others said she was not the real princess at all. This became known as the prisoner in the tower mystery. Many believe the real Marie Therese died in prison, and a different girl was sent out in her place. Why? because the truth was too shameful for the royal family to accept: the fall of the Bourbons. Eventually, the Bourbon dynasty collapsed. Why? The people were angry at rich royals living in castles while they starved. The kings had become weak and out of touch. The family bloodline was full of sickness. When King Louis XVI was killed by guillotine, the royal age ended, and the family's long history of keeping the blood pure came to a sad, broken end. What we learn from this story, we learn that power without care leads to pain. The Bourbon royals thought that keeping their bloodlines clean would protect them, but it only hurt their own children. It kept them silent, hidden, and sick, just like the Habsburgs, just like the Pharaohs, just like the Hawaiian royals. It was the same story in a different castle. Ending Section 5. Teaser for next. We've now seen royal families from 4 parts of the world, and how their wish to stay pure led to some of the darkest family tragedies in history. But there's more. Next, we'll talk about modern science and how we now understand what those kings and queens never did. We'll explain how genes work, what recessive traits mean, and how we can avoid making the same mistakes again. Stay with us. So far, we've told stories about kings, queens, palaces, and secret children. But now, let's talk about something a little different. Let's talk about how the human body works. Don't worry, we won't use big scary science words. We'll explain it in a way anyone can understand. Because to truly know why royal families had so many problems, we need to understand one small but powerful thing: genes. What are genes? Your body's like a very big machine, and genes are the tiny instructions that tell the machine how to work. Genes decide what color your eyes are, how tall you grow, what your voice sounds like, and even how your brain and heart work. You get your genes from your parents. Half come from your mom, half come from your dad. Good cop, bad cop. Most genes come in pairs, one from each parent. Let's say your mom gives you a strong gene for healthy bones, and your dad gives you a weak gene for bone disease. Guess what? The strong gene can cover the weak one, so you grow up fine. But if both parents give you the same weak gene, then the problem shows up. That's how many royal children got sick. Their parents had the same weak genes because they were from the same family. A simple example, the bad egg game. Imagine a game with 2 baskets. Each basket has 9 good eggs, 1 bad egg. If you take 1 egg from each basket, chances are you'll get 2 good eggs, and everything will be okay. But if you take a bad egg from both baskets, now you have 2 bad eggs. That's trouble. Royal families were like baskets with more bad eggs, because they kept mixing the genes. Same eggs again and again. More inbreeding, more chances of getting 2 bad eggs. One is a recessive gene. There are 2 kinds of genes. Dominant genes, strong, loud, take charge. Recessive genes, quiet, hide in the background. Recessive genes can carry diseases or disabilities. When you marry someone who shares the same family genes, recessive problems become louder, because now there are 2 of them. That's why inbreeding often leads to mental delays, bone diseases, weak immune systems, problems with blood, eyes, or speech. Royals had no idea. Back then, kings and queens didn't notice. They had no microscopes, no DNA tests, and no idea what genes were. They thought if a child was sick, it was a punishment from God, the fault of the mother, or just bad luck. But today, we know better. We know that many of the royals were not cursed. They were victims of science they didn't understand. Modern examples, how science helps now. Today, if 2 people want to get married and they're from the same family, like cousins, doctors might offer a genetic test. This test looks at their genes and tells them if there is a risk of problems in their children, what kind of diseases may pass on, how to protect future generations. Thanks to science, people now make healthier choices. Inbreeding is still a problem in some places. Even today, in some parts of the world, cousin marriages still happen a lot. Sometimes it's because of tradition. Other times it's because families want to keep money or land together. But now we understand that more inbreeding equals more health risks. Generations of cousin marriages can build up dangerous genes. Children from close blood parents may need more medical care. It's not about shame, it's about learning. This part of the story is not about blaming anyone. It's not about saying royal families were bad people. Most of them had no idea what they were doing. They were following what they thought was best for their families, their kingdom, and their traditions. But now that we know the science, we can do better. We can teach others. We can help future generations avoid the same pain. Genetic diversity equals health. Here's something important. The more different two people's genes are, the healthier their children are likely to be. This is called genetic diversity. It's like planting a garden. If all your flowers are the same and one gets a disease, they might all die. But if your garden has many kinds of flowers, some will survive. That's why scientists today say mixing genes is a good thing. It brings strength, new ideas, and better health. The science of royal mistakes. To sum it up, inbreeding means parents share too many of the same genes. This causes a higher chance of recessive diseases. The more generations that inbreed, the worse the problems get. Now we know why. Charles II couldn't talk. Tutankhamun walked with a cane. Some Bourbon princes were locked away. They weren't monsters. They weren't cursed. They were just children of broken genetic circles. Ending section 6. Teaser for next part. Now, you understand the science the royals never did. But before we end our story, we still have one last chapter to share. In the final part of this video, we'll reflect on all we've learned. What were the real costs of keeping pure blood? What did these royal families lose, beyond just health? And how can their stories help us choose better, love smarter, and lead with kindness today? We've traveled across the world, from the castles of Spain to the tombs of Egypt, the islands of Hawaii, and the golden halls of France. In every place we saw the same story again and again. Powerful families trying to protect their bloodlines and ending up hurting the people they love most. Now let's stop for a moment and ask, was it worth it? What the royals wanted. These kings and queens wanted many things. To keep their thrones safe, to keep their family strong, to stay pure in the eyes of gods or tradition, to stop other families from taking power. To do that, they made a simple rule. Marry your cousin, keep the blood pure. They thought this would help them win, but instead, they lost everything. What they lost? Let's look at what royal inbreeding really cost. Healthy children. Many royal babies were born sick or disabled. They could walk, talk, or grow up like other kids. Heirs to the throne. Many kings died without children because of infertility or early death. This caused wars, fights, and confusion. Trust from the people. When kings couldn't rule well or looked weak, the people started to lose hope. Some revolted, some started revolutions. The future of a country, bad leadership, and sick rulers caused entire empires to collapse. The Habsburgs, the Pharaohs, and the Bourbons all fell. The saddest part of all. But the biggest loss was love. Think of the children who never played outside. The girls forced to marry their brothers. The boys who were hidden away in dark rooms. The kids who died before they had a chance to speak. They never asked to be born this way. They were just victims of their family's choices. A crown isn't everything. All these kings and queens wore gold on their heads. But gold can't fix a broken heart. Power can't cure a broken body. A crown can't protect a child from pain. At the end of the day, we are all human, royal or not. And what matters most is not how pure your blood is. It's how kind your heart is. Modern world, modern choices. Today we know so much more than the royals ever did. We understand genes, diseases, choices, and the power of love over blood. That means we can make better decisions. We can choose love over pride, choose health over tradition, and choose to learn from the past instead of repeating it. The importance of telling these stories. Why do we tell stories like this? Not to make fun of kings, not to shame queens, not to scare anyone. We tell these stories to learn, to remember, to honor the children who never had a voice, to say, you mattered, your pain mattered, and we will not forget you. What you can learn today. You don't need to be royal to learn something from this story. You can learn to ask questions, to think before following old ideas, to listen to science, to care for the people around you, to make choices that protect others. That's what good leaders do. That's what strong families do. A final message to the royal children, to Charles II, who could speak, to Tutankhamun, who walked with a cane, to the Bourbon princes locked in rooms, to the Hawaiian princesses who died young. We see you, we hear you, we tell your story so the world will remember. Not as curses, but as children who were loved, hurt, and lost because of choices made in the name of power. Teaser for final part. There's just one more piece to this journey. In the last section, we'll answer one final question. If you could talk to a king or queen from the past, what would you say? Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a room. It's quiet, but full of shadows. And one by one, the royal children we've met begin to appear. Charles II of Spain, Tutankhamun of Egypt, Princess Hawaiian of Hawaii, the silent princes of France. They sit in this room looking at us, not with anger, not with shame, but with a quiet question. Do you see us now? If Charles could speak, Charles too might say, I was born a king, but I never ruled. I wore a crown, but I could not speak. I wanted to play like other children, but my body was too weak. All because my parents chose family pride over my health. And then he might ask us, what will you choose when it's your turn to lead? If Tutankhamun could speak, Tutankhamun might whisper, I was buried in gold, but I lived in pain. I walked with a cane when I was only a boy. My parents were siblings. My wife was my sister. I never got to grow up. I never had children. But still, the world remembers my name. Not for what I did, but for what I suffered. And then he might ask us, will you remember why I suffered, or just what I wore? If the Hawaiian royals can speak, Hawaiian of Hawaii might step forward saying, I was born with sacred blood, but love was taken from me. I wanted to marry the one my heart chose, but rules, religion, and royal fear stopped me. I died young, carrying a broken heart. And she might say, let the next girl choose love, not duty. If the hidden princes can speak, the urban children, the ones who were locked away, might say together, we were never painted. We were never shown to crowds. We were born different, and so we were hidden. But we were still human. We still smiled, cried, and hoped, even if we couldn't speak it out loud. And then they'd ask, will you hide your shame or face it with love? If the royal parents could speak, what if the kings and queens themselves could speak? What would they say? Maybe they would say, we didn't know. We thought we were protecting. A line. We believed in purity, tradition, and strength. But now we see the strength we wanted came with a price too high. We paid that price in the tears of our children. And maybe they'd say, if we had the chance, we'd choose differently. The lesson for today. You are not a king. You may not wear a crown, but every day you make choices. Choices about who you love, what traditions you follow, what ideas you teach your children, what stories you tell about the past. So here's the truth. Blood does not make you better. Power does not make you pure. Only love makes you strong. A message for the future. The world today still struggles with pride. Some people still believe in better families or stronger bloodlines. But stories like this remind us there is no perfect family. There is no perfect past. But there can be a better future. If we listen, if we care, if we learn. Closing, remembering them. So as this story ends, we remember them. Charles, the silent king Tutankhamun, the golden boy in pain, Hawaiian, the princess of heartbreak, the Bourbon children, born to be hidden, and all the royal children who never got to grow up. They were not monsters. They were not mistakes. They were warnings wrapped in crowns. And now we carry their stories forward. Not to fear them, but to make sure no child, anywhere, ever suffers the same fate again. This was the story of purity turned to poison, of love trapped by tradition, and of royalty that forgot what it meant to truly care. Let us not forget them. Let us learn from them. And let us walk into the future with open hearts. Not royal blood, but human kindness.